Welcome into part 3 of our wide receiver scouting. We took a little break. You were sick. I was sick. That time of year. But we're back. We're looking at the last group of receivers that we're going to talk about. I'm sure there's going to be others that get drafted that we don't talk about. But it is March 8th. Combine is over. Yeah, and a lot of people make fun of the combine a little bit, but it really does matter to teams as much as we don't want it to. There's certain things that do matter. How did you enjoy the combine?
For some reason, I'm always glued to it. I don't know why, and I spent 3 days underneath a blanket on the couch watching. It was raining here in California, so made a good excuse not to do anything and just sit there and watch them test and everything else. And I like to hear NFL Network. I think does a good job with Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah. Just hear them talking about guys and just trying to stay ahead of the game a little bit, and a lot of interesting stories, a lot of interesting guys, and stuff like that. And so I like it. There's always, now we got guys that are saying, no, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to do my medical, or I'm not going to work out, and now there's rumors, that eventually they think they're going to get rid of the combine, or people are just not going to go or something. To me, it's a job interview. I mean, I understand, like Caleb Williams, he's already got like $10 million in the bank or something like that. So, I don't know, Marvin Harrison not doing anything. And so whatever.
Yeah, it seems to be more like there's a couple guys that will do well. They're like, oh, like maybe I should go back and look at this guy, more than it hurts other players, like guys like Roma Dunze. We saw what we saw on the field, and anything he did at the combine was not going to really change that, except for a couple player like Audric Estime ran like a 4.71, the running back from Notre Dame. It's like, oh, that hurts. That definitely hurts his stock, because there's no running backs that run in the 4.7s that are successful in the NFL, really. But it's good to watch. I do think it's funny in the 40, they make them run from that 3-point track stance. It's like no one does that in football.
It's I know they don't show it as much, but I know things like the 3-cone drill and those numbers are very, very important to start, stop, speed, and lateral movement, all that junk. I like watching the gauntlet, when the receivers, and just some of the receivers, some of them just look so, they're just catching the ball so easy, so fluid, and running in a straight line, and all that other stuff. So
yeah, the 10-yard split, how fast are you within 10 yards? Because most routes are run within 10 yards, or most, no one's running 40 yards. It's very rare.
Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, or whatever, And
yeah. But we're going to jump into some receivers here. A lot of these guys, we just don't know in terms of our dynasty drafts if they're going to be impactful or not. A lot of it's going to depend on where they go and when they go. And a lot of these guys are probably going to be day 3 picks. Maybe some sneak into day 2. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Sorry. A lot of these guys will be day 2, day 3 picks, a mix of day 2 and day 3. So we're starting off with an interesting one from Western Kentucky, Malachi Corley. Just a couple, measurements and stuff about him. He came in, I think 5'11", but he's thick, 210, 215. Went to Western Kentucky, was pretty productive there his last couple of years. Didn't test at the combine. I forget why. There was something with an injury potentially that happened to him like right before the combine, I believe. But he's an interesting one because he's really hard to evaluate, because I think 30%, and that's not even exaggerating, 30% of his passes became behind the line of scrimmage. So what did you think of Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky?
Yeah, I watched videos on all these guys, and that's kind of the college game. That's part of the running game and stuff like that. But that's not going to translate to a I don't know, an NFL game very well. You got to run routes down the field. You got to do it all. So, that's what that's the offense they ran there at Western Kentucky and stuff like that. And I don't know. Next guy is what I say.
Yeah, I kind of like him a little bit more. I have a soft spot for like these versatile players that can, he had like some rushing attempts in college, 11, which isn't a lot, but it's college, and for a receiver, that's a decent amount. I always have a soft spot for guys like that. He's really good with the ball in his hands. Get the ball in his hands. That's why they gave him a lot of bubble screens and jet sweeps and stuff like that. He's fun after the catch. He kind of plays like a little bit like a running back. It's just the question is he going to be Deebo Samuel or is he going to be Rondale Moore, right? Both those players are kind of yak type of players, especially in college they were. And Deebo, we've seen it work because he kind of went to the right system that knows how to use them. Or is he just going to be like a Rondale Moore who's nothing more than just like an extension of the running game, like you said, and he doesn't get enough volume to do much more. So
it could be quarterback related too. So I mean, let's be fair about it. Doesn't mean the receiver stinks or anything else. We're talking Western Kentucky, so it's not a hotbed for quarterbacks, and maybe the guy couldn't throw down the field as much, or he was limited or something. So let's make sure we add that.
And they just throw a lot at Kentucky. They don't really run the ball. Bailey Zappi went there and he broke records. He threw the ball almost 700 times in college in 2021. The quarterback in 2022, Austin Reed, threw it over 600 times. So that's just how they play. Like you said, it's the extension of the run game, but it is just hard to evaluate him, Malachi Corley. But there's rumors of him potentially going as high as like the third round and stuff. If people like his is he going to be able to be a traditional receiver? Again, Rondale Moore, he went in the second round. Like he hasn't done anything, so it's a bad example. It's not the greatest example to compare him to, but teams like these kind of players. So I think he's going to get a chance to show what he's got. Again, is he just going to be Rondale Moore? Or is he going to be more like Deebo Samuel? We will find out. Next guy on the list is Johnny Wilson out of FSU. The dude's a monster. I think he's like 6'7". I think he's the tallest. He was the tallest combine player, like skill position player, I think, ever. I think he beat Darren Waller at over 6'7". So a lot of people speculating, does he just go into a tight end, turn into a tight end? But he ran decently well, like a 4.52. That's not great for a receiver, but it's not terrible. Obviously, his vertical is pretty good. His broad jump's pretty good. He actually had a pretty good like shuttle drill. So what did you think of this monster of a man, Johnny Wilson?
Yeah, I always look at their height and weight first, and I go 6'7", and he's like 240, or he's in his 230s. I'm thinking like, and I watched some video of him, and he's running routes down the field and stuff like that. So I'm not sure where he fits. I can't think of any comparison. I can't think of a comp of a wide receiver this big. But we know today's NFL, we got guys like Kyle Pitts. We got these hybrid tight ends and stuff like that. But if this guy's never lined up as a tight end or anything like that, then he's going to be lining up as a wide receiver or something. So kind of interesting. And in 2022, he had over 20 yards per catch average. So his volume isn't really high compared to other receivers. He only caught 41 passes last year, but let's see if he fits in somebody's team, or how many receivers do they start on game day, or is it 5 or 6 or something?
Usually
I don't
five are
know.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you just wonder if he's going to have a spot or whatever. But I'm sure he does. I'm sure he's got the tools and everything else. You just got to go to the right place.
Yeah. He's just, I don't know. He feels a little bit out of place in today's NFL where it kind of favors, you need good route running and speed in general stuff like the old, I want the 6'5" receivers. Still important, but it's not as important. But he does have some good underlying numbers. Obviously, like his hand size and arm length is ridiculous. So that is a plus for receivers. Like whether we like it or not, generally receivers with bigger hands and a little longer arm length do slightly better. Um,
Oh,
uh,
there was a guy for New Orleans. Was it Colston?
Marquise Colston he went the opposite, tight end to receiver.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a comparison right there. A big guy. I don't know if he was Johnny Wilson's what 6'6", 6'7".
6'7". I mean,
Yeah,
Darren Waller was drafted as a wide receiver. When he got drafted, his position designation was wide receiver. So he's the guy who made the switch. Kelvin Benjamin is probably
yeah.
a
Well,
good
he
one.
he had too many Big Macs and pizzas, so he ate himself out of the league.
Yeah, but he did at the end make the switch to a tight end. But he was like 6'5", 245. It's the 230, 240. It's pretty big for a receiver. So I don't know. I'm not super excited about him. His drop rate was pretty bad. He had like an over 12% drop rate, which is really high. So yeah, just like if he makes the move to tight end, I'll be more interested, I guess is the big thing with him. But we'll move on here. Jalen McMillan is our third Washington receiver. And he's a guy I really like. One of the more exciting ones on this list, in my opinion. He comes in about 6'1", 190 around there. Obviously, he played at Washington. He was really good for a couple years there. He was kind of hurt last year. So that affected him a bit in terms of his numbers. But like his 10-yard split was like a 1.5. He ran a high, 4.47, which is fine. But his 10-yard split was 1.53. So he's one of the faster ones in the class within the first 10 yards. Good hand size, good arm length. What do you think of Jalen McMillan out of Washington?
He was injured. He did, for part of the year. When he was there, I mean, he looked the part. He looked like he could run routes pretty well, and he was very involved with the catching that tight spiral from Michael Penix. Looked pretty good. He seems to have okay numbers, so I'm sure there'll be a spot for him somewhere.
Yeah, he looks really good. Just like he kind of reminds me a little bit of like how Keenan Allen plays a little bit, just kind of finding like the mid. He's always open and just finds like the hole in the zone if it's a zone play. And then after the catch is like he's not impressive with speed or anything, but he just seems to like avoid tackle somehow and sneaks through. Like so I like that in him. I really do like Jalen McMillan a lot. He's it's pretty amazing that Washington had Rome Odunze, a top 10 guy. Jalen Polk is mocked as a second, third round guy, and then Jalen McMillan is also mocked up there. So like 3 receivers really high, but it's just out of his route running just is really good. Always finding the hole in the zone. So he's someone I'm really interested in. Can see being just like a really good wide receiver in the NFL, and that could translate obviously if he's like the wide receiver 2 for a team. Will he be a dominant wide receiver 1? Probably not. But he'd just be a really good wide receiver 2. I think there's a good chance. I think he's kind of like that quarterback's best friend type of play. So, you said overall you kind of you like Jalen McMillan, comparing him to like Johnny Wilson or Malachi Corley.
Absolutely, yeah. Compared to Johnny Wilson, or even I put him as we've looked at three guys. I like the way Jalen McMillan, the way he operates. So,
yeah. Moving along, because we do have a lot to get to here. Brendan Rice, the son of Jerry Rice, went to USC. He was used in an interesting way. He was kind of a little bit more of a deep threat. Like his average depth of target was over 15 yards, which is, pretty deep. Obviously in college, you get away with that a little bit more. He wasn't amazing necessarily in how he tested. I think he ran like a 4.5, which they kind of suggested that was kind of low for him. But what I like is that from 18 years old, he was producing. His first couple years in college kind of dipped his third year. And then his fourth year, he was back up there. He played with Jordan Addison as well. Maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, what did you think of Brendan Rice, who people are excited about?
He's kind of similar. He's 6'3", 210. I think Jerry Rice is right in that category too. So then I read. I was just kind of doing some reading about him, and they say one of his weaknesses is maybe long speed, and that's what they said about Jerry Rice. that he didn't have, and I think he was drafted in the second round. I know he wasn't a first rounder, and we all know the story about Jerry Rice. So you watch video on Brendan Rice there at USC, last year, and it's like looks pretty good. So I don't see any big hang-ups here on I don't know. I know 4.5 is an okay number for a wide receiver and stuff like that. You can test these guys and put a stopwatch on them, but then when you put pads and helmets on them, that's a different number. We all know that. So could be one of these guys, but I think he looked pretty good. He's got enough college experience, so he's ready to go to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. And you played at Colorado for a couple years, and then USC. Yeah, he was just kind of like he feels like he's gonna get drafted for sure. Someone's gonna take him, maybe partly because he's Jerry Rice's son, which is fair, maybe not. I don't know, but he's gonna get a chance to kind of prove himself. And I don't know. He kind of feels like he's gonna be like a solid. He's gonna work hard. He's gonna be pretty. He's been around football his entire life, right? Those are pluses. Intangibles that you can't measure type of things. But his skill is his route running, which I tend to lean towards those guys when I'm choosing between. It's the third round of your dynasty rookie draft, and it's like, oh, there's Jalen Hyatt, or there's this Brendan Rice. I know they're a different draft class, but Jalen Hyatt is that speed over the top threat, and then Brendan Rice is a good route runner. Maybe Hyatt put up these big numbers, but how it translates to the NFL, it's like I'll lean towards the talented route runners over the just kind of the deep threat guys or the gadget player guys. So he'll get a chance to prove himself, and I'm fine with taking a stab at him. He's just like, he looks like he could just be a solid player. Maybe he's just like at best a wide receiver 3, like a Joshua Palmer or something. And when he gets his number called, he can produce for a couple games. But beyond that, you don't want him as your starting guy for 17 games, or maybe he turns out to be more. Who knows? But I definitely lean towards taking a chance on those type of guys. So, everyone's already rumoring San Francisco. Jerry Rice, obviously. So I don't know. We'll see there. Jermaine Burton is up next from Alabama. Another very interesting guy. He was, talk about deep threat. He was even more. He had the highest ADOT, average depth of target. Over 20 yards was his average depth of target. I don't think on my list here, and I have about the top 20 or so guys, no one's even over 15 and a half. No, someone's at 15.9 is the next highest. He's at 20.1, which is insane. His average target was 20 yards down the field. But he's interesting. Is he just a deep threat? Maybe. Can he be more? It's possible. He looked good going up, getting the ball, He had a contested catch rate of over 56%. So he was catching over half of his targets that were contested, which is obviously important if you are a deep threat. No yards after the catch because everything's down the field, and really impressive. Obviously, it only came on like 40 or 50 targets, 0 drops last year in college, which is pretty amazing. His broad jump was through the roof, which shows his explosiveness. His vertical is really good, and he ran a 4.45. So, what'd you think of Jermaine Burton?
Yeah, the first thing I seen, guy's a big trash talker. Just about every catch that he had, when I was watching video on him, he was talking crap to the defensive back and stuff like that. And then I read about it that he's highly competitive and kind of his temper gets the best of him or something like that. He doesn't have you identified some of the good numbers, but he doesn't have a large volume.
Mm-hmm.
So he's an Alabama receiver, but he didn't seem to be a typical Alabama receiver that we've seen in the past. Julio Jones or Jamison Williams or some of the other guys that we've seen.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said Calvin Ridley. You can keep.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So, we'll see. That is the yards per catch is up there. I guess he played a couple of years at Georgia too. So,
yeah.
So SEC football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically, is he going to be strictly a deep threat, or can he develop into a little bit more? That's the big thing. Because if he's just a deep threat, or you're not going to be able to rely on him in fantasy. He'll be good for an NFL team, but you're not going to rely on him in fantasy. So that's really what it's going to come down to. But I do like the 0 drops, again, even though it was only like 40 or 50 targets. And just for reference, if you're looking at just numbers, so you look at it like, he had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. That was 34% of Alabama's passing offense. So, he was a huge part of their passing offense. Over 34% is a huge number. So they just didn't pass the ball a whole lot. It'll be interesting. The question will be like where he goes and will he develop more is he going to be just a deep threat or can he be a little bit more? So, the trash talking is kind of funny. Jamari Thrash coming up next. We're getting into a couple guys that I think probably have roles as a slot receiver, 6 foot, 188 pounds. And, that he just seems to be that like kind of a slot receiver. Played at Louisville. Had huge numbers his 4th year in college, over 42% of their offense. Nothing impressive at the combine necessarily, and not necessarily super impressive the underlying stuff, but he seems like he could have a role as like a slot receiver. What do you think of Jamari Thrash?
Yeah, I kind of like this guy. He was I seem to use him a lot. Louisville had a pretty good year last year. And this guy was the main part of their offense, and seems to run routes pretty good and things like that. So slot receiver seems like a spot for him, and I just kind of like the way he looked on video.
Yeah, he did look good. He did have some drops, some drop problems in his last year. I think he had 8 drops last year. So I think 16 over 3 seasons. I'd like to see that improved a little, especially if you're going to be a slot guy. But yeah, he's just kind of like solid around the board. His route running's good. His He has good long speed, not great. His footwork's pretty good. His run after the catch ability. He just seems like he's going to fit into the slot. And can he develop into a little bit more? We'll see. I don't know. The nice thing about slot players that are projected to go on the slot, it's like, well, they're going to get on the field, and if they're like better than we think, that we give them credit for, they're going to be able to show it. So, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of comes to mind of like maybe he just got onto the field a little bit because it's like, oh yeah, you can fit in the slot, and then you realize like, oh, this guy's a lot better than we, gave credit for. So, he feels that way. Jacob Cowing, the next guy, kind of feels that way out of Arizona. He's kind of fun too, but again, we're talking about small. Jamari Thrash wasn't too small, but 5'8", 168, small player. Went to the Senior Bowl, and I think I heard mixed things about him. So, but man, like the production, you just look at the production, and it's just there. Like 29%, his first year in college, 29% of the team's passing offense, I think at UTEP. 42% his second year, 39% of the team's offense. Those are huge numbers. 27%, 29%. He was above 25% of the team's passing offense every year in college. So the production's there. He ran a 4.38, which is obviously really, really good. His yards per route run were really good. I'm kind of intrigued by like what I see from Jacob Cowing. So what did you think of him, Dad?
Yeah, I really liked him until you told me 5'8", because I had him as 5'11". I liked him at 5'11" better, but yeah, he.
I think you're right. By the way, I think he is 5'11".
Oh, good. Well, then I like him. I like him a lot better than. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he. This is out of this group that we're talking about. I think Jacob Cowing is my favorite here. So is that
okay? Sorry to interrupt you. I lied. He is 5'8".
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
now you hate him.
No, I don't know if I hate him, but the guy, just watch his video. He's all you need is less than 5 minutes, and you go, wow, this guy looks pretty good. So his like 89 catches last year. That's a pretty big volume for a college wide receiver. In Arizona, they had a pretty good football team there, and I just like him. Sorry I didn't say a whole lot, but
no, I mean
I didn't know his speed either at 4.3. So updated numbers for me.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean everything you're saying is right. You watch him and you're just like, damn, he's really good, but he's an outlier due to his size, both his height and weight. He's kind of like Tank Dell last year. It's like, man, this guy at Houston is just like a monster. And then you look, it's like, man, he's only 170 pounds. Can you really is he going to be limited to the slot? Can he play on the outside? Well, yeah, Tank Dell was an outlier that could. But they're outliers for a reason. It's because normally guys like this don't work out. But my philosophy, go ahead.
No, if you run 4.3 and you know how to run routes, and you can leverage defensive backs and things like that, you're going to have a spot in the NFL. Just because you're 5'8" or 175, 180 pounds doesn't mean you're going to last. We think smaller, these guys are going to get creamed and stuff like that. Yeah, sometimes they do, and sometimes guys, they know how not to get hit. So,
Yep. Yep, that's right. That's 100% right. And is he going to be limited to just a slot? Well, that's going to limit his fantasy production a lot. If he doesn't play on the outside. But my philosophy when it comes to these outlier players, and I kind of felt this way with Tank Dell, but then I let the weight idea get a little bit into my head, was if they just look really, really damn good, and this is, I'm not saying this is the only problem with him, but the first negative you see on every list is he's small. I'll take a chance on that. Football's changed. Every sport's changed. I talked about this with like Steph Curry, in the 90s or 80s, probably wouldn't play basketball, but The only reason he fell as far as he did is because he was small, right? But Tank Dell was the same reason. Tank Dell, if he was 20 pounds heavier, would have been a first-round pick, So I'll take a chance on these outliers when the first negative, the biggest negative is their size, because guys can overcome it. So yeah, I think 4 more here. Malik Washington is up next. Another intriguing player out of Virginia. He was one of the most productive players in college last year. Again, almost 50%, 47% of Virginia's passing offense went through Malik Washington. He was good for a few years there, but he was obviously a monster last year. Ran a 4.47, a really good 10-yard split, one of the better ones in this draft class. Hands and size, maybe it's a little bit of an issue. I think he's, was he 5'9", 5'8"? Yeah, that's the combine.
Yeah, I got 5'8".
Yeah, 5'8", 194. So another smaller guy, but just a guy who was just constantly producing. So what did you think of Malik Washington?
Yeah, he Virginia, I don't think it was that good of a team, so this was obviously their number one guy, so they threw the ball to him a lot, and he seems like he's got a little bit of a smaller build to him, but he knows he'd run the routes, make the cuts, and do all the other stuff pretty well. So, he's very similar to Jacob Cowling as where he's going to fit in the NFL and stuff like that. So here we talk about another slot receiver. So we'll see where he ends up.
Yeah, that's kind of where he's being designated as, is kind of that slot receiver, but he's really hard to cover. It's almost like it's impossible to cover. So, can he play on the outside and win? We'll see. These are guys where a lot of it's going to depend on where they go and when they go. So, next up on the list is Anais Smith, who he was another one that I think had some kind of injury before the combine, so he didn't get to participate there. Texas A&M, kind of like a hybrid running back wide receiver. I think he played running back 1 year there at Texas A&M actually. So, had good, not great numbers. Didn't get to see his measurables and things like that. But I like that he had a less than 2% drop rate in college. So anything on Anais Smith?
No, he's 210, so that's a running back weight, more than a wide receiver. But I guess reading here, his running back experience shows up, after he gets the ball in his hand, and so he may not be as fluid of as a receiver, kind of the difference between a running back and a wide receiver and stuff like that. So
yeah, but the NFL is going a little bit more versatile, and maybe someone uses them that way. Their punt returner, wide receiver 4, who can, run the ball. Again, is he just like Rondale Moore? There's a really good chance that's just what he is. How Rondale Moore was coming out of college. So, but you do see the running back experience when he gets the ball in his hands. That's for sure. It's just in terms of fantasy and what we're going to expect from, I don't know. I don't expect too much from him to be a major impact player. I think his I thought I saw that he had a pretty good potential 40 time there. So we will move along. Did I freeze, or can you still hear me?
I still hear you.
Okay, there I am.
You're good.
I was frozen on the screen. 2 more here. Javon Baker out of UCF. is our second to last player. Javon Baker, just pulling up the numbers here. I think he was another one that wasn't at the combine. Went to UTF, good size. He's 6'1", 208, 210, 205, right around there. Produced quite a bit. His 2 years of college. He played at Alabama, but didn't really do much there. But when he transferred to UCF, he started to produce. He did go to the combine. He ran a 4.5. Nothing impressive at the combine, really, to know. It's kind of slow in the 10-yard split, but over 10% drop rate. So some negatives there for sure. How'd you like Javon Baker?
Yeah, there's nothing that really jumped out at me and impressed me and stuff like that. So, UCF, he's just another guy there and stuff like that. So, we'll see where he fits.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It was just kind of nothing besides like the production at UCF, who, they played a little bit lesser of a competition, which isn't the end of the world, but it's just a fact. But nothing at the combine, and the drop rate kind of sucks and things like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of in agreement. Just nothing really. I don't have to spend too much time on him. It's just kind of, if he goes in the third round, okay, I'll go back and watch him. And what did I miss, right? But I expect him to be day 3 / undrafted type of receiver. So Luke McCaffrey is our last one. You were talking about it. It started as like a quarterback and bounced around. And, I thought he went to Michigan, but that was Dylan McCaffrey that went to Michigan. And he went to Nebraska and then Rice. So, but yeah, he was playing at Rice. Obviously not the best competition, but he has some, when he made the switch to wide receiver, he was the man for the team. 28% and 38% were his 2 years. 28% and 38%, which is 33% of the teams of Rice's passing offense in 2 years went to McCaffrey. Obviously, he broke out a little bit earlier because he started as a quarterback, but he ran a 4.46. Pretty good broad jump, and his 10-yard split was really, really good, 1.52. That's up there with guys like Rome Odunze and Brian Thomas. So yeah, how'd you like watching Luke McCaffrey? Versatile player.
Well, yeah, I know who this guy was, and I had no idea. I always wondered where he ended up, and I'm sitting there, like I said, sitting on the couch, and Luke McCaffrey's running wide receiver drills, and I'm like, what's going on? So I quickly just took a look at it and seen, yeah, he was the starting quarterback at Nebraska there for a couple of years, and he wasn't very good, and he was more of a running threat, and then obviously ended up at Rice. His last year, 2023, 71 receptions, almost 1,000 yards, 992 yards and 13 touchdowns. So his dad, this is Christian McCaffrey's brother, but his dad, Ed McCaffrey, was an NFL wide receiver who caught passes from John Elway. So, and won 2 Super Bowls. So obviously the DNA's in his blood. So, this is a guy I root for. Let's see somebody take a chance on him and give him a chance. Give him a chance to draft him or undrafted free agent or something like that. He's got the size. He's 6'2", about 195 pounds. So that's pretty good wide receiver size. 4.46, you said?
Yeah, 4.46.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. His broad jump was pretty good. It wasn't amazing, but it was pretty good. But yeah, I like the 10-yard split again. What's he doing in 10 yards? And that was really good. His shuttle, his shuttle was really good, which not a lot of guys actually run it, but he was one of the better ones. He was right up there with Rome Odunze. He's actually better than Rome Odunze at the shuttle drill, which again shows your lateral, change of pace stuff. So I do really like what I see from him. One negative, I guess, his contested catch target percentage. So 25% of his targets were contested, and I think a lot of that comes back to what you're doing, like in your route running. Are you getting open and creating space? Now, maybe it's more about the quarterback leading you into stuff, but I do think a lot of that has to do with route running. So, yeah, he looks good. He's versatile. He can run the ball. He can pass the ball. Like, teams are going to like that. So I think he gets drafted for sure. We'll see where he goes. But all these guys, I would assume, get drafted. Maybe a couple don't, but I wouldn't be surprised if all these guys get drafted. And there's a couple guys that sneak into the third, maybe even a second round if someone really likes them, like a Jalen McMillan. There's a lot of receivers here. You should be pretty excited in your dynasty drafts if you have a lot of even second round picks. So,
how many have we? How many we've looked at least 20 or 21, 22 receivers.
Yeah, around there, and there's people talking about. I think the record for receivers in the first round is 7, like 2004 or something like that. So people talking about that could get broken. There could be 15 in the first 2 rounds. So yeah, it's pretty. And we talked about it in our first video, talking about the main guys. Like, man, everyone's listed as potentially running like a 4.3, and that's what it was at the combine. Everyone was freaking running 4.3. You know, we saw the record break at 4.21, Xavier Worthy. But everyone, Brian Thomas running a 4.33. Adonai Mitchell, Troy Franklin, and Dunze running low 4.4s or mid 4.4. Everyone was just fast. Lad McConkey 4.39, right? Xavier Legette at 225 pounds running a 4.39. Roman Wilson a 4.39. It was just kind of crazy. All these guys running fast. So you said your favorite out of all these was Cowling?
I like Jacob Cowling and Jamari Thrash and Brendan Rice. Those 3 guys kind of caught my eye, and we'll see where they get drafted and who they end up with. Are they going to get opportunities and stuff like that? So
100%. Yeah, I like Cowling. I like Jalen McMillan from Washington as well. He seems to be, out of this whole list, the most likely, or has the highest chance to kind of actually develop into like potentially a number 1 wide receiver. So a lot of these guys will be good for their teams, but I don't know if they're going to have that wide receiver 1 potential. So, but that's it. I think we just have tight ends to kind of wrap up, which there's not a whole lot to talk about. Few here and there. And then we'll be continuing more dynasty content, individual rookie profiles, free agent stuff coming up, mock drafts, all that good stuff. So, good. Any last words there, Dad?
No. Like I just said, there's 20 plus wide receivers we've looked at, and we've heard the draft class wide receiver heavy, like we talked about. That and offensive tackles, which doesn't mean anything for fantasy, but those are the 2 heavy hitters we'll see. And of course, we all know the quarterback, so we'll see what's going to happen. There's free agency is going to start Monday at 12 noon Eastern time, so the legal tampering period. So we'll see teams starting to fill their spots, and that'll definitely affect their draft, who they're going to draft. So,
yep, there's already signings happening and all that stuff. So, yes, indeed. But we will finish up there, and we will be back soon. We'll catch you guys all next time.